My husband cheating with my sister at a rooftop bar, I exposed him publicly, and his carefully built world began to shatter. But let me back up to when my world first shattered. Every Wednesday afternoon followed the same routine. I'd rush from the Michaels' home where I worked as a nanny to pick up my son Tyler for soccer practice. I'd mastered the art of folding laundry at lightning speed while keeping one eye on the clock. The twins' tiny socks and onesies formed perfect little squares under my practiced hands. This Wednesday was different, though. It was the championship game, and my husband Dean had promised to coach. His morning text still illuminated my phone screen. Got the playbook ready. See you at the field. I traced my finger over those words, a flutter of hope rising in my chest. After 3 canceled parent-teacher conferences and countless missed soccer practices, Dean was finally stepping up for our son. Mrs. Michaels doesn't need these clothes folded today, I whispered to myself, trying to quell my anxiety as the minute hand inched toward 3 o'clock. Tyler had been practicing his penalty kicks every evening this week, his face lighting up when Dean actually showed up to help him 2 nights ago. Dad says I'm going to score the winning goal, he told me, eyes shining with admiration for the father who'd become increasingly absent from his life. The kitchen clock showed 3:15 p.m. when Mrs. Michaels returned early, catching me glancing nervously at the door for the 5th time in as many minutes. Amanda, you should go. Tyler's big game, right? Her voice carried that gentle understanding that always made me feel less alone in my struggles. She adjusted her designer watch, probably worth more than my monthly salary, and leaned against the marble countertop. I still need to finish the twins' laundry and prepare their afternoon snacks, I protested weakly, even as my heart raced with the need to leave. The twins and I can manage without perfectly folded onesies for one afternoon. She smiled, revealing the warmth that made working for her so different from my previous employers. Championship games don't happen every day. I nodded gratefully, quickly gathering my purse while explaining that Dean would be coaching. He's been practicing with Tyler all week, I said, believing my own words despite the history that should have taught me better. Mrs. Michaels' smile tightened slightly. She'd heard about Dean's broken promises before, had witnessed my tearful phone calls on the days he failed to pick up Tyler when promised. Traffic crawled along Oak Avenue as I checked the time repeatedly. The digital numbers on my dashboard seemed to mock me as they changed from 3:25 to 3:26. My fingers drummed impatiently against the steering wheel, tapping out a rhythm of anxiety. Before leaving, Mrs. Michaels had pressed an extra $20 into my palm. Every championship needs a proper celebration, she'd insisted when I tried to refuse. Get those boys some snacks, they deserve it. I pulled into West Side Market, calculating that I had just enough time to grab juice boxes and orange slices before the game started at 4 o'clock. The automatic doors whispered open as I grabbed a shopping basket and rushed toward the produce section. Mentally checking off items, 24 juice boxes for 12 sweaty 4th graders, 4 bags of pre-sliced oranges, maybe those chocolate granola bars Tyler loved for after the game. That's when my phone rang, Tyler's school number lighting up the screen. My heart stuttered as I answered. Mom, his voice sounded smaller than his 10 years. Where's Dad? Coach Peterson is asking if anyone knows the plays since Dad's not here. My stomach dropped, the familiar weight of disappointment settling in my chest. He's not there yet? I asked, knowing the answer before the words left my mouth. No. The single syllable carried all the hurt Dean had inflicted over years of broken promises. Everyone's parents are here except mine. I'll be there in 10 minutes, honey, I promised, abandoning the shopping cart in the middle of the aisle. The oranges and juice boxes suddenly seemed trivial compared to the crack I could hear forming in my son's heart. My mind raced with excuses for Dean as I hurried back to my car. Traffic, work emergency, flat tire. The same excuses I've been making for him since Tyler was old enough to notice his father's absence. I'd become an expert at painting Dean as the victim of circumstances rather than choices shielding Tyler from the truth that his father simply didn't prioritize him. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I realized I needed to take a different route to avoid the construction on Main Street. The digital sign at the intersection had been warning about it all week. Road closed. Detour ahead. The detour would take me past the Loft, that fancy new rooftop bar downtown, where Dean claimed corporate executives always dragged him for mandatory after-work drinks. He described it with such disdain, as if these networking events were torturous obligations rather than opportunities to escape family responsibilities. The red light at Jefferson and 5th seemed interminable as I sat fidgeting behind the wheel. From this intersection, I had a clear view of the Loft's outdoor patio 4 stories up. Despite the afternoon sun, I could make out the faces of patrons enjoying early happy hour, their carefree laughter carrying on the spring breeze. My breath caught in my throat as I spotted a familiar profile at one of the tables, Dean's distinctive gray blazer, and the back of his head as he leaned in close to someone. The blazer I'd ironed just this morning, the blazer he'd put on while promising he wouldn't let Tyler down today. I squinted, sure I was mistaken, until he shifted slightly and revealed Jessica's unmistakable blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. My best friend since college, the woman who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had held Tyler hours after he was born, who had brought me soup when I had pneumonia last winter. Jessica, who had been texting me almost daily about her marital troubles with Brian, seeking my advice and sympathy. The light turned green, but I couldn't move as I watched her hand casually stroke my husband's arm, their faces inches apart in an intimacy that left no room for innocent explanation. A car honked behind me, the sound jarring me back to reality. I pressed the gas pedal mechanically, my vision blurring with tears I refused to shed. In that moment, as the Loft receded in my rearview mirror, I felt something inside me crack and reform. The hurt was there, a white-hot pain that threatened to consume me. But beneath it bubbled something unfamiliar, rage. Not the fleeting anger I'd felt during our arguments about his absences, but something deeper and more resolute. Dean wasn't stuck in traffic. He wasn't dealing with a work emergency. He was exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly who he wanted to be with. And it wasn't with his son on the most important day of his 10-year-old soccer career. It wasn't with me. The truth settled over me like a sudden frost, cold and clarifying. As I drove toward Tyler's school, I made a silent promise to myself. This would be the last time Dean's choices would break our son's heart, the last time I would make excuses for his absence, the last time I would preserve his image at the cost of my dignity. I just didn't know yet how sweet that final reckoning would be. The steering wheel felt cold under my white-knuckled grip as I swerved into the nearest parking spot, tires screeching against the asphalt. My wedding ring clinked against the metal as my hands trembled. Looking up at the loft's sleek glass exterior, I felt a storm brewing inside me, rage and heartbreak colliding like thunderclouds. My body moved on autopilot while my mind screamed contradictory commands. Go to Tyler's game, confront Dean, call Jessica, just drive away and pretend I saw nothing. Each option played out in rapid succession behind my eyes, none of them leaving me unscathed. The logical part of me knew Tyler needed a parent at his game. The wounded part needed answers. The wounded part won. I barely remembered locking my car or crossing the street. The building's revolving door spun me into a marble lobby where a security guard nodded as I strode toward the elevator bank. My reflection in the polished doors showed a woman I hardly recognized. Cheeks flushed, eyes burning with a fire I'd never seen in myself before. The elevator ride to the rooftop seemed eternal, each floor's soft ding marking another moment where my life as I knew it was ending. 5th floor, the Christmas when Dean had given Tyler a baseball glove, despite his passion for soccer. 6th floor, Jessica holding my hand through my miscarriage 3 years ago, promising she'd always be there for me. 7th floor, our wedding day, Dean vowing to cherish me forever. 8th floor, the rooftop bar where those promises were currently turning to ash. When the doors finally opened, the cheerful hostess asked if I had a reservation. Her perfect smile faltered as she took in my expression. "I'm meeting my husband," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Name?" she asked, glancing down at her tablet. "He's already here with a blonde woman." The words tasted bitter, like copper pennies on my tongue. "Oh, you must mean Mr. Reynolds and Miss Carter. Corner table." She gestured toward the patio. "Would you like me to?" I was already moving past her, scanning the outdoor space until I spotted them at a corner table, partially hidden by decorative palm plants. The afternoon sun highlighted Jessica's honey blonde hair, highlights I'd helped her select just last month. Dean's hand rested casually on the small of her back, his thumb making small circles on the red fabric of her dress. My dress, the one she'd borrowed last week for a client dinner. They didn't notice me approaching. Jessica was laughing at something Dean said, her hand resting comfortably on his thigh. My husband, the same man who claimed he was too busy to attend a single-parent teacher conference this year, was casually swirling an expensive-looking cocktail while our son waited for him on a soccer field across town. I stood there for perhaps 10 seconds, memorizing the tableau of betrayal, the intimate lean of their bodies toward each other, the lipstick mark on Dean's collar, the familiarity in how Jessica's fingers played with his watch band, a birthday gift from me he'd claimed to love. "Well, isn't this cozy?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, higher and shakier than intended. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers, Dean's drink sloshing over the rim of his glass onto the pristine white tablecloth. Jessica's face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. Dean recovered faster, his expression shifting from shock to irritation with practiced ease. "Amanda," he said flatly, as if I were an unexpected bill in the mail. "What are you doing here?" The absurdity of his question ignited something volatile within me. "You should be coaching our son's soccer game." The words burst from me, loud enough that nearby tables fell silent, cocktail glasses pausing midway to lips as heads turned in our direction. "It's the championship, Dean. You promised him." Dean's face registered shock, then annoyance at the public scene I was creating. Jessica, at least, had the decency to look ashamed, her eyes dropping to the table where her manicured nails, the same coral shade I'd complimented last week, nervously shredded a cocktail napkin. "Amanda, calm down," Dean hissed, glancing nervously at the other patrons. "You're making a scene. I can explain." But then he did something I'll never forget. He laughed, a short, dismissive chuckle that conveyed exactly how little my feelings and Tyler's disappointment meant to him. "It's just a kid's game, Amanda. Peterson can handle it." "Just a kid's game," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet now. "Tyler has been practicing those plays with you all week. He was counting on you." Dean sighed dramatically, as if my concerns were tedious. "I'll make it up to him. We'll go fishing this weekend or something." Jessica attempted damage control, sliding away from Dean, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. "Amanda, we were just discussing the Johnson account. Dean mentioned he had to cancel on Tyler, and I was just comforting him because he felt terrible about it." Her words trailed off under my stare, the lie too flimsy to sustain itself. "The Johnson account," I echoed. "Strange, that's the same excuse you both used last Friday, and the Thursday before that, and at Jessica's birthday dinner that Brian couldn't attend." I turned my gaze to her. "How is Brian, by the way? Still working nights at the hospital while you comfort my husband?" Jessica flinched as if I'd slapped her. Dean's jaw tightened, the muscle twitching beneath his 5 o'clock shadow. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, checking his watch impatiently, the watch I'd saved for 6 months to buy him. "You're being dramatic. How long?" I asked, my voice steadier now, fueled by a strange calm that had settled over me. When neither answered, I knew. Once? Years? Their silence was confirmation enough. The realization that I'd been played for a fool by the two people I trusted most hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been picking up extra nanny shifts to afford Tyler's soccer camp, they'd been meeting for afternoon trysts. While I'd been consoling Jessica through her marriage troubles, she'd been sleeping with my husband. "I need to get to Tyler's game," I finally said, surprising myself with the calmness in my voice. Dean rolled his eyes. "You're overreacting. I'll make it up to him this weekend." Jessica reached for my arm, but I jerked away from her touch as if she were contagious. "Amanda, please, we need to talk about this like adults. Don't you dare show up at my house again," I told her before turning to Dean. "And don't bother coming home tonight." Dean's face darkened. "It's my house too." "Then I'll be the one not coming home," I replied, already planning to call Kate. "Either way, I don't want to see you." As I walked away, head high despite the curious stares from neighboring tables, I heard Dean's angry whisper, "See what you've done? Now I have to deal with this drama all night." Their laughter followed me to the elevator, quieter this time, conspiratorial. They were already moving on, already dismissing me and the scene I'd caused. The hostess avoided my eyes as I passed, her discomfort palpable. Inside the elevator, I watched the numbers count down, feeling oddly disconnected from my body. My reflection in the polished doors showed the same woman who'd ridden up minutes before, yet everything had changed. Something had broken inside me, something that couldn't be fixed with Dean's empty promises, or Jessica's fake apologies. As the doors opened to the lobby, I took a deep breath and stepped out. Tyler was waiting, and unlike his father, I wouldn't let him down. But as I walked toward my car, a new resolve crystallized within me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Dean's laughter echoed in my mind, fueling something I hadn't felt in years, a fierce determination to reclaim my dignity, whatever it took. The soccer field came into view as I turned into the school parking lot. Parents lined the sidelines in folding chairs, cheering enthusiastically. I was 20 minutes late. The scoreboard showed 0-1, with the opposing team leading. My heart sank as I scanned the field for Tyler's number 14 jersey, finally spotting him defending near the goal, his small shoulders tense with concentration. I slipped onto the metal bleachers beside another mother who nodded sympathetically. "You haven't missed much," she whispered. "Though Coach Peterson seems a bit lost today." Coach Peterson paced the sidelines, consulting a crumpled piece of paper. Likely, the standard plays he'd been using all season. Nothing like the specialized strategy Dean and Tyler had developed together during those rare evenings when my husband actually showed up for practice. I cheered loudly when Tyler blocked a shot, waving when he glanced toward the stands. His face brightened momentarily before his eyes continued searching, looking past me for the father who wouldn't be coming. The disappointment that flashed across his features cut deeper than any betrayal Dean had inflicted on me. Tyler's team lost the championship game 1-3. The boys huddled together afterward, their young faces a mix of disappointment and resilience as Coach Peterson offered words of encouragement. I waited near the bench, watching Tyler accept his participation trophy with a polite thank you that didn't reach his eyes. "Mom," he jogged over, his cleats crunching on gravel. "Did you see my block in the second quarter?" "I did," I said, pulling him into a hug that he only half resisted. "You were amazing out there." His eyes darted past me again. "Dad never came, huh?" "No, honey, he didn't." On the drive home, Tyler stared out the window, his participation trophy forgotten on the back seat where he'd tossed it without ceremony. His profile, so much like Dean's, was silhouetted against the gathering dusk, streetlights illuminating his features in rhythmic flashes. "Dad had an important work thing, huh?" he asked, not looking at me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the memory of Dean and Jessica laughing together still fresh in my mind. My throat constricted around the automatic excuse I'd always provided. For the first time, I didn't make excuses for his father. "No, honey, Dad made a bad choice today." Tyler nodded slowly, understanding more than a 10-year-old should have to, like when he promised to come to my science fair but went golfing instead. The question stunned me. "You knew about that?" Mitch's dad saw him at the country club. He shrugged with practiced indifference that broke my heart. "It's okay, I got second place anyway." We stopped for drive-through burgers, a rare treat on our tight budget. Tyler perked up slightly when I added a chocolate milkshake to the order. "Championship dinner," I declared, forcing brightness into my voice. "You played like a champion today." At home, I helped Tyler with his shower, checked his homework folder, and tucked him into bed earlier than usual. He was emotionally exhausted, falling asleep midway through our nightly reading routine. I sat beside his bed for a few extra minutes, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the way his eyelashes cast tiny shadows on his cheeks. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though he couldn't hear me. Sorry that his father couldn't see the extraordinary child before him. Sorry that I'd spent years making excuses for a man who didn't deserve them. That night, after tucking Tyler into bed, I sat at our small kitchen table with a legal pad. Dean hadn't come home, hadn't even called to check on Tyler. His betrayal with Jessica hurt deeply, but it was his laughter, that casual dismissal of our son's disappointment, that hardened something inside me. I began making lists in neat, precise columns, our joint checking account with its meager balance, the savings account Dean had borrowed from 3 times this year for business investments that never materialized, the modest savings bonds Tyler's grandparents had established for his college education, the small life insurance policy my parents had gifted us when Tyler was born, our rental agreement with its clause about early termination. We didn't own much, but what we had built together, I had mostly paid for with my multiple nanny jobs over the years. While Dean chased one failed career opportunity after another, his current position at Reynolds Marketing, a company whose name conveniently matched our surname though no relation existed, was his longest employment stint at 18 months. I created a separate page for monthly expenses, rent, utilities, car payment, groceries, Tyler's after-school activities, medical insurance. The numbers told a stark story. Without Dean's income, we would struggle, but we could survive. I'd been carrying most of the financial burden anyway, picking up weekend babysitting gigs and holiday house-sitting to compensate for Dean's inconsistent contributions. My phone buzzed just before midnight. Kate's familiar face lit up the screen, her timing uncanny as always. My younger sister had a sixth sense for trouble. Tyler texted me about missing Dad at his game, she said without preamble. Everything okay? I hadn't planned to tell anyone yet, but the words poured out. The rooftop bar, Jessica, Dean's laughter. Kate's swift intake of breath punctuated my story, her outrage on my behalf feeling like the first warm thing I'd experienced since the afternoon. That absolute, she caught herself, mindful of Tyler sleeping down the hall. I knew something was off with him lately. But Jessica? You're Jessica, the godmother to Tyler? The very same, I confirmed, the betrayal still raw. Come stay with me, she offered immediately, already in problem-solving mode. My spare room is a disaster, but I can clear it out tomorrow. Tyler can take the sofa bed. I declined, explaining that I didn't want to disrupt Tyler's routine any more than necessary. He still has school tomorrow, and I still have work. Plus, this is his home. I won't be the one to uproot him. Kate grew quiet before asking what I planned to do. The legal pad in front of me now had a different list. Divorce lawyer recommendations from an online search. 3 names were circled, with Patricia Sanderson, known for her fair but fierce representation of mothers, starred twice. I'm getting a divorce, I said, the word strange yet liberating on my tongue. Good, Kate said firmly. And then what? Then I rebuild. For Tyler? For me. Thursday and Friday passed in a strange fog. Dean came home late Thursday night, his key scraping in the lock around 2 a.m. I lay awake listening to him stumble around the living room before collapsing on the couch without speaking to me. He left before dawn on Friday, taking a change of clothes in his gym bag, the front door closing with exaggerated quietness. At breakfast, Tyler pushed his cereal around the bowl. Is Dad mad at us? No, honey, I assured him, smoothing his cowlick. Dad's just working through some stuff. Will we still go fishing on Saturday? He asked, eyes hopeful. Dad promised to teach me how to use the new lures Grandpa gave me. I watched my son's face fall when I admitted I didn't know. How about we plan something fun, just you and me, as a backup? Maybe that new superhero movie. At work, Mrs. Michaels noticed my distraction as I mechanically folded laundry and prepared the twins' lunch. One of the babies had spilled applesauce that I'd failed to clean up, and I'd nearly put salt instead of sugar in their oatmeal. Bad week? She asked gently, intercepting my hand as I reached for the wrong ingredient again. Something about her kindness broke through my carefully constructed wall. My husband's having an affair with my best friend, I blurted out, immediately regretting my unprofessional disclosure. To my surprise, she sat down at her kitchen island and simply asked, What do you need? What? The question caught me off guard. Time off, different hours, a good attorney. What do you need, Amanda? Her directness was refreshing after 2 days of emotional limbo. I don't know yet, I admitted, tears threatening for the first time since the loft. Well, figure it out, she said, not unkindly. Then tell me. I've been where you are, and I didn't have anyone asking me that question. It would have helped. By Friday evening, I had secured an appointment with Patricia Sanderson for Monday morning, temporarily frozen our joint checking account, leaving enough for bills, and arranged for Tyler to spend Saturday with my parents under the guise of helping Grandpa with his garden. Dean finally called around dinner time not to check on Tyler, but to inform me he'd be working late again. The thinly veiled lie ignited a quiet fury inside me. Mrs. Michaels' question, what do you need, kept echoing in my mind as I tucked Tyler into bed that night. What I needed was for Dean to face real consequences, not just from me, but in a way that matched his public humiliation of our family. Dean had always been obsessed with appearances, with being respected and admired. The man who coordinated his ties with his pocket squares cared deeply about his image. As I smoothed Tyler's blanket, an idea began to form, something fitting for a man who valued his public image more than his son's heart. For the first time in days, I smiled, a small, determined curve of my lips that held no warmth but promised resolution. Dean had taught me an important lesson about the man he truly was. Now it was time to show him exactly who I had become. The weekend passed in a blur of forced normalcy for Tyler's sake. Dean texted Saturday morning to cancel the fishing trip, citing unavoidable client meetings. I watched Tyler absorb the news with practiced stoicism as he packed his overnight bag for Grandpa's instead, his small shoulders squared with resilience that both broke my heart and strengthened my resolve. Monday morning arrived with a strange sense of clarity. The fog of betrayal had lifted, revealing a path forward illuminated by purpose rather than anger. I dropped Tyler at school with an extra tight hug. What's that for? He asked, already glancing toward his friends waiting by the playground. Just because I love you, I replied, smoothing his cowlick one last time. Have a good day, sweetheart. You too, Mom, he called, already running toward the basketball court. I drove directly to the law offices of Patricia Sanderson, located in a modest brick building downtown. The waiting room smelled of lemon polish and fresh coffee. A framed needlepoint on the wall read, Well-behaved women rarely make history. I took it as a good sign. Ms. Sanderson was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected someone severe and intimidating, but she was a petite woman in her 50s with salt and pepper, hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her handshake, however, communicated strength and confidence. So, she said once we were seated in her office, you want a divorce? Yes, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice, as quickly and cleanly as possible. The divorce papers were straightforward. We had little property to divide, and I wanted full custody with reasonable visitation for Dean, provided he actually showed up. Miss Sanderson nodded approvingly, as I outlined my financial situation and Tyler's needs. And the father's relationship with your son? She asked, making notes in elegant handwriting. Inconsistent at best, I admitted. He loves Tyler, but on his own terms and timeline. My son deserves better than conditional affection. When I explained my specific request for how the papers should be delivered, Miss Sanderson raised an eyebrow but didn't refuse. It's unusual, she admitted, but not illegal. We typically use a standard process server, but there's no law against including additional items with the papers. A hint of amusement crossed her features. I've seen worse in 25 years of family law, much worse. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in years, as if I'd set down a boulder I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The spring air felt fresher, colors more vibrant. I checked my watch, still an hour before I needed to be at the Michaels. On impulse, I turned toward Maple Street, stopping at Sweet Sensations Bakery. The bell above the door chimed merrily as I entered the small shop. Glass cases displayed artful confections in every color imaginable, the aroma of vanilla and sugar enveloping me like a warm embrace. Amanda! Mrs. Rodriguez emerged from behind the counter, her round face lighting up with recognition. It's been too long. How's that handsome boy of yours? The bakery owner was a mother whose children I had occasionally watched years ago before landing the steadier position with the Michaels. Her twins were in high school now, her oldest in college. Tyler's doing well, I said, then hesitated before adding, but I'm getting divorced. Her expression shifted immediately to understanding. When I explained what I needed, her eyes softened with compassion. I divorced Mr. Rodriguez 20 years ago when I caught him with my cousin, she confided, leaning across the counter conspiratorially. Never regretted it for a minute. Best decision I ever made besides opening this bakery. She showed me their selection of single cupcakes, each elaborately decorated with handcrafted fondant designs, wedding cupcakes with delicate sugar flowers, birthday cupcakes topped with miniature balloons, anniversary cupcakes with intertwined hearts. Nothing for divorce yet, she joked, though maybe there should be. I selected a chocolate one with buttercream frosting, requesting good luck written in elegant script across the top. Mrs. Rodriguez led me to a small table near the window where we could discuss the design. She sketched several options on a notepad, her artistic talent evident in the quick strokes. This one, I decided, pointing to a design that balanced elegance with subtle irony. Exactly the tone I wanted to strike. Mrs. Rodriguez worked carefully, adding small decorative touches around the edges, tiny buttercream stars, and a delicate chocolate drizzle. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she piped the message in perfect cursive. On the house, she insisted when I tried to pay. Consider it a donation to the cause of women everywhere. I hugged her impulsively. This woman I barely knew who had become an unexpected ally in my moment of need. You're doing the right thing, she whispered. Stay strong. Wednesday afternoon found me unusually nervous as I watched the Michaels twins. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for confirmation that everything was in place. The cupcake waited in Mrs. Rodriguez's refrigerator, the papers prepared in Miss Sanderson's office. All the pieces were aligned. Mrs. Michaels noticed my frequent glances at the clock and shooed me out early again. Go handle your business, she said with a knowing smile. I'd confided my plan to her over a glass of wine the evening before, after the twins were asleep. She'd not only approved but offered to keep Tyler overnight if necessary. Every woman deserves at least one moment of poetic justice, she told me, refilling my glass. And some men deserve a reckoning. I drove to the loft, parking across the street with a clear view of the entrance. My heart pounded in my chest, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. At exactly 5:30 p.m., as predicted, Dean and Jessica arrived together, his arm casually draped around her waist as they entered the building. So predictable, these secret rendezvous that weren't so secret anymore. Same place, same time, same betrayal repackaged as something special. I wondered if he ordered the same overpriced cocktail for her that he'd been drinking when I confronted them. The small digital camera in my purse had been a Christmas gift from Dean 2 years ago, for taking better pictures of Tyler's games, he'd said, though he rarely attended them himself. Now it would serve a different purpose. I waited 30 minutes before entering the bar, giving them time to settle into their routine of intimate touches and false security. The hostess recognized me but said nothing as I declined her offer to be seated, heading directly to the bar. From my stool, I had a perfect view of their corner table. I kept my distance, ordering a soda while surreptitiously filming their intimate behavior. Dean's hand on her knee, Jessica's fingers playing with his collar, their heads close together as they laughed at some private joke. I positioned the camera discreetly, capturing several minutes of their interactions. Nothing explicit, just clear evidence of an ongoing affair rather than a one-time indiscretion, evidence that couldn't be explained away as just discussing the Johnson account. When Dean excused himself to use the restroom, I seized the opportunity. Moving quickly through the happy hour crowd, I approached their table. Jessica's eyes widened in alarm as she recognized me. Amanda, enjoy him while it lasts, I said quietly, causing her to nearly spill her wine. What are you doing here? She hissed, glancing nervously toward the restrooms. I smiled coldly, gathering evidence. Did you know Dean's been texting my sister Kate, too? The lies slid out easily, and I watched doubt flicker across Jessica's face. Affairs built on betrayal carried their own seeds of destruction, the constant fear that your partner would do to you exactly what they'd done with you. You're lying, she whispered, but uncertainty clouded her eyes. Why would I? I replied with a shrug. Just thought you should know what you're getting. Good luck with that. I walked away before Dean could return, slipping out through the patio exit and back to my car. Mission accomplished. The last piece of my plan was in place. The delivery was scheduled for Thursday at 3 p.m., when Dean would be meeting with his biggest client. Ms. Sanderson had confirmed the timing, and Mrs. Rodriguez personally boxed the cupcake that morning, adding a small note card with the bakery's logo. A touch of professionalism for what was, in essence, an act of glorious pettiness. I couldn't be there to witness it, but Kate could. My sister positioned herself at a cafe across from Dean's office building, texting me updates as I tried to focus on the Michaels twins. Delivery person just went in. Dean's coming out to reception. He's opening the box. Oh my God, his face. Then came the photo. Dean standing in his office doorway, divorce papers in one hand, cupcake box in the other, his expression a mixture of shock and embarrassment as colleagues peered curiously from their cubicles, his perfectly curated professional image crumbling in real time. Along with the papers and cupcake, I'd included a thumb drive containing selected footage from the loft. Nothing explicit, just enough to show his betrayal wasn't a one-time mistake. Just enough to make it clear I wouldn't be gaslit or manipulated into forgiveness. Kate's final text simply read, "Mission accomplished. He looks destroyed." I stared at the message, expecting to feel triumph or at least satisfaction. Instead, I felt something quieter but more profound. Peace. For the first time since spotting them at that rooftop bar, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. The twins were napping, the house quiet except for the gentle hum of the dishwasher. I sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through the photos Kate had sent, studying Dean's face as he realized his carefully constructed world was collapsing. In that moment of public unraveling, he looked so small, so ordinary. Nothing like the man who had once seemed to fill every room with his presence. Mrs. Michaels found me there, smiling at my phone. "It's done?" she asked, setting a cup of tea before me. I nodded, showing her the photo. She examined it, her lips curving into a satisfied smile. "The cupcake was a nice touch," she said. "Elegant, with just the right amount of pettiness," I added, and we both laughed, a free, unburdened sound that echoed through the sunlit kitchen. The twins woke from their nap an hour later, demanding snacks and stories. I moved through the afternoon routine with mechanical efficiency, my mind still processing the image of Dean's shocked face. "Mrs. Michaels squeezed my shoulder supportively before leaving to pick up her older children from school. "Remember, Tyler can stay overnight if you need space," she reminded me. I arrived home to an empty apartment, grateful for the hour of solitude before picking up Tyler from his after-school program. I kicked off my shoes, made tea, and sank onto the couch, savoring the quietness. The vibration of my phone shattered the peace. Dean's calls started that evening, 15 in 2 hours, each voicemail more desperate than the last. The first came while I was stirring pasta for Tyler's dinner. "Amanda, call me back. This isn't funny. We need to talk about whatever stunt you're pulling." The second arrived as Tyler was telling me about his science project. "Amanda, seriously? Divorce papers with a cupcake? People at work are talking. Call me." By the third, the anger had given way to panic. "Please, just call me. I can explain everything with Jessica. It's not what you think." I listened to the first few messages, hearing his voice crack as he begged me to call him back, to let him explain. By the fifth message, he was crying, something I hadn't seen him do since Tyler was born. The raw vulnerability in his voice was startling after years of his emotional distance. "I don't want to lose you and Tyler," he sobbed into my voicemail. "Please, Amanda, I messed up. I know I messed up." I saved that particular voicemail, not out of cruelty, but as confirmation that the wall of indifference he'd built around himself could actually be penetrated. For years, I'd wondered if anything could break through his carefully maintained facade. Now I knew. Tyler asked about the calls during dinner, his young face worried as my phone vibrated for the 12th time, the sound punctuating our meal with anxiety. "Is that Dad? Why do you keep ignoring it?" I set down my fork, considering my words carefully. "Dad's upset about some grown-up stuff," I explained, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "But it doesn't change how much we both love you." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Is he coming home tonight?" "No, sweetie, not tonight." After tucking Tyler into bed, I blocked Dean's number, giving myself permission to focus solely on my son's needs. The instant relief was palpable, like finally setting down a heavy suitcase I'd been carrying too long. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in a week, dreamless and uninterrupted. Friday morning dawned clear and crisp. Tyler seemed lighter at breakfast, chattering about the class field trip to the science museum while I packed his lunch. I dropped him at school with our new goodbye ritual, 3 quick squeezes of his hand that meant "I love you." At the Michaels house, the twins were fussy with emerging teeth, requiring extra comfort and distraction. I was kneeling on the playroom floor, demonstrating how to stack blocks for the 20th time, when Mrs. Michaels appeared in the doorway, her expression cautious. "Amanda, Jessica is at the door. She's asking to speak with you." My stomach dropped. "I don't have anything to say to her. That's what I told her." Mrs. Michaels' voice carried a protective edge, but she's insistent. "Would you like me to send her away again?" I considered for a moment, then shook my head. "No, I'll handle it." "The twins? You can tell her I'm busy." From the nursery window, I watched their exchange. Mrs. Michaels stood in the doorway, her posture unyielding. "Amanda's busy with the children," I heard her say firmly. "And you need to leave." Jessica's shoulders slumped in defeat as she nodded, turning back toward her silver Audi, a recent upgrade she'd shown off last month, attributing it to a bonus that I now realized probably came from Brian's surgeon salary. Her designer sunglasses couldn't hide the puffiness around her eyes as she slid into the driver's seat. I felt a confusing mixture of satisfaction and sadness watching my former best friend retreat. 15 years of friendship dissolved by her choices. Birthday celebrations, college road trips, being her maid of honor, her standing as Tyler's godmother, all meaningless now. Later, Mrs. Michaels handed me an envelope. "She left this for you." Inside was a handwritten letter on Jessica's monogram stationery, the set I'd given her last Christmas. The elegant cursive was marred by tear stains and crossed-out words. The letter was full of apologies and excuses. They'd been unhappy for years. It just happened. She'd felt overlooked by her own husband. The words blurred before my eyes, each sentence more self-serving than the last. The letter ended with a plea. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please don't tell Brian." Her concern for her own marriage after helping destroy mine struck me as the final betrayal. I shredded the letter before leaving work, watching the pieces flutter into the recycling bin like confetti. The weekend provided a welcome respite, as Tyler and I established new routines without Dean's sporadic presence. Saturday morning we made pancakes shaped like soccer balls, a messy experiment that left batter spatters on the ceiling, but had Tyler giggling uncontrollably. "Mom, yours looks more like a deflated basketball," he laughed, pointing at my misshapen creation. "Well, yours looks like Australia," I countered, prompting an impromptu geography lesson. Over breakfast, we visited the library, filling our canvas bag with books about space exploration, Tyler's current obsession. The children's librarian, Ms. Patel, recommended a cookbook with kid-friendly recipes when Tyler mentioned our pancake adventure. "This has a recipe for pizza dough you can shape into anything," she whispered conspiratorially. "Much more forgiving than pancake batter." Back home, we started planting a small vegetable garden in containers on our apartment balcony, marking spaces for cherry tomatoes, basil, and the sugar snap peas Tyler insisted would grow all the way to the sky like Jack's beanstalk. Tyler asked fewer questions about his father's absence than I'd expected, perhaps because Dean's presence had always been inconsistent. Instead, he seemed to flourish in the predictability of our new routine, helping create our weekend schedule on a colorful chart that now hung on the refrigerator. On Sunday afternoon, while Tyler played with neighborhood friends in the apartment complex playground, I sat on a bench watching them race up and down the slide. The spring sunshine felt warm on my face, a reminder that life continued to move forward despite the seismic shifts in our family structure. My phone rang, Kate's familiar ringtone breaking into my thoughts. "Dean showed up at my apartment this morning," she said without preamble, her voice a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "He was crying, Amanda, actually sobbing in my hallway." I sat up straighter, glancing toward Tyler to ensure he was still happily playing. "What? Why your place?" According to Kate, Dean had confused her apartment with mine, a mistake that seemed impossible, given that Kate lived across town in a completely different building, a high-rise with a doorman and security system, unlike our garden apartment complex. "He thought I was you at first," she explained. "Started this whole speech about making amends and being a better man. Then he registered my pajamas and pink hair and realized his mistake." "What did he want?" I asked, watching Tyler coordinate an elaborate game involving the monkey bars and what appeared to be an invisible enemy. When he realized his error, he became even more distraught, begging me to intervene on his behalf. "It was honestly pathetic, Amanda. He said he's been sleeping in his car because Jessica's husband found out and threatened him." I gasped despite myself. "Brian knows?" Apparently your cupcake delivery inspired Brian to send Jessica divorce papers too, with a whole box of cupcakes, 6 of them, all with different messages. Sweet Sensations is doing brisk business in divorce cupcakes this week. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I felt a surprised laugh bubble up from somewhere deep inside me. "I shouldn't laugh," I said, though I couldn't stop the smile spreading across my face. "You absolutely should," Kate insisted. "It's poetic justice of the highest order." She explained that she'd finally told Dean to leave, promising nothing except to let me know he was looking for me. He looked terrible, by the way. Unshaven, same clothes as yesterday, a far cry from his usual polished self. Monday morning brought my second meeting with Miss Sanderson, who confirmed that Dean had been served properly and the divorce proceedings were officially underway. "He called our office 16 times on Friday," she reported with professional detachment, flipping through a notepad. My assistant explained that all communication should go through legal channels now. As I left her office, I felt an unexpected lightness. The anger that had fueled my revenge had burned itself out, leaving behind a calm determination to build something better for Tyler and myself. On impulse, I stopped by the community college on my way to work, picking up brochures about their early childhood education program. Mrs. Michaels had mentioned that the preschool where her sister worked was looking for assistant teachers, positions that came with tuition assistance. Standing in the sunlit campus courtyard, watching students hurry between classes with purposeful expressions, I allowed myself to imagine possibilities that had seemed unthinkable just weeks ago. For the first time in years, I pictured a future shaped by my own choices rather than Dean's broken promises. A future where Tyler and I thrived, not despite his father's absence, but because we had finally stopped waiting for him to show up. The community college brochure became my roadmap in the weeks that followed. I filled out the application that evening at the kitchen table, Tyler coloring beside me, occasionally peering over to ask what different words meant. Matriculation, prerequisite, accreditation. Each term represented a step toward the future I was building for us. 2 months passed with surprising swiftness. Spring turned to early summer, bringing longer days filled with possibility. The divorce proceedings moved forward with unexpected smoothness, Dean offering little resistance to my requests for custody arrangements and asset division. Miss Sanderson seemed almost disappointed by the lack of drama. Most clients would be thrilled with such a straightforward case, she remarked during our May meeting. But I have to admit, I was looking forward to using some of my more creative legal strategies. Tyler finished 4th grade with improved grades and a renewed interest in soccer. His final report card showed remarkable progress in mathematics and reading, subjects he'd struggled with earlier in the year when Dean's empty promises had left him distracted and anxious. Ms. Rivera says I might qualify for the advanced reading group next year, he announced proudly, placing his report card on the refrigerator next to our weekend activity chart. Dean eventually stopped trying to contact me directly, the stream of desperate voicemails and text messages drying up after Ms. Sanderson sent a firmly worded letter about harassment. Instead, he began following the court-mandated communication channels regarding visitation with Tyler, sending formal emails that read like business correspondence, rather than co-parenting discussions. His first supervised visit was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at the Family Center downtown, a neutral location where trained social workers observed parent-child interactions. I dreaded the drop-off, uncertain how Tyler would respond to seeing his father after weeks of separation. "What if Dad doesn't remember the new handshake I made up?" Tyler asked as we drove downtown, his small fingers fidgeting with his seatbelt. "Then you'll teach it to him again," I reassured him, though internally I questioned whether Dean would even notice such details. When we arrived at the center, Dean was already waiting in the lobby, dressed in pressed khakis and a blue button-down that made him look like he was heading to a job interview rather than meeting his son. Something about his posture had changed, the confident swagger replaced by a weary hesitance that made him seem smaller somehow. I exchanged minimal pleasantries with the social worker before hugging Tyler and promising to return in 2 hours. As I walked away, I glanced back to see Dean kneeling to Tyler's height, his expression more attentive than I'd seen in years. "Dad cried when I told him about scoring the winning goal in our last game," Tyler reported afterward, seeming confused but somewhat pleased by his father's emotional response as we drove home. "And he knew all the players on my team, even though he's only been to 1 game." I simply nodded, keeping my opinions about Dean's newfound attentiveness to myself. Tyler didn't need my skepticism or bitterness. He needed space to rebuild whatever relationship with his father was possible now. Our apartment felt different after I rearranged the furniture and replaced Dean's oversized leather recliner, the one he'd insisted on buying despite its ridiculous scale in our small living room, with a compact desk where I could study. The space felt airier, more intentionally designed rather than a collection of compromises. 3 nights a week, after putting Tyler to bed, I spread my textbooks across that desk, working through assignments for my first community college courses, early childhood development, introduction to psychology, and English composition, filled my evenings with intellectual challenges that had nothing to do with navigating Dean's moods or making excuses for his absences. Mrs. Michaels had not only recommended me for the assistant teaching position at Sunshine Preschool, but also adjusted my nanny schedule to accommodate my Tuesday and Thursday morning classes. "Investing in yourself is never wasted effort," she told me when I thanked her, passing me a cup of coffee in her kitchen one morning. "Besides, the twins adore you. They can share you with some preschoolers for a few hours a week. The divorce would be finalized in another month," according to Miss Sanderson, who seemed pleased with the straightforward proceedings. "We'll have you officially single by Independence Day," she joked during our last meeting. "Seems fitting." Kate invited us for Sunday dinners, creating a new tradition that gave Tyler something stable to anticipate each week. My sister's apartment, a quirky 3rd-floor walk-up filled with thrift store treasures and art from her travels, became our weekend sanctuary. Tyler loved helping her boyfriend Marcus grill vegetables on the tiny balcony while Kate and I prepared the rest of the meal in her kitchen. During one such dinner in early June, while Tyler and Marcus were engrossed in a competitive round of video game racing, Kate broached a subject I'd been avoiding. "Have you heard about Jessica?" she asked tentatively, refilling our wine glasses. I shook my head, genuinely unconcerned about my former friend's whereabouts. The space she'd once occupied in my life had closed up like water after a stone passes through, leaving no trace. "Brian took the kids to his parents' place in Arizona," Kate continued, tucking her pink-tinged hair behind her ear. "Jessica's still here, trying to save face." I nodded, unsurprised that Brian would prioritize protecting their children from gossip. As a pediatric surgeon, he'd always demonstrated more parental responsibility than either Dean or Jessica. Kate studied me carefully over the rim of her glass. "She asked about you at the grocery store yesterday, wanted to know if you'd ever consider talking to her again." The question hung between us, unexpected and complicated. The anger I'd once felt toward Jessica had faded to something more like pity, though I wasn't ready to examine that shift too closely. "Maybe someday," I finally answered, "but not anytime soon." The neighborhood block party in late June brought an unexpected confrontation. The tenant association had transformed our apartment complex's central courtyard into a festive space with food stands, games, and activity stations. I volunteered at the children's face painting station, discovering an unexpected talent for creating miniature masterpieces on eager small faces. I was finishing a particularly elaborate butterfly design on a little girl's cheek when I sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Looking up, I spotted Dean standing awkwardly near the basketball court, wearing jeans and a plain gray t-shirt that hung loosely on his frame. He looked thinner and less confident than I remembered, almost uncertain of his right to be there despite living in the complex until recently. He kept his distance, but watched Tyler playing basketball with friends, his expression unreadable from where I sat. When our son spotted him and ran over for an awkward hug, I saw genuine emotion in Dean's expression, a flash of vulnerability that would have been unthinkable months ago. I returned to my face painting, determined to give them space for whatever conversation they needed to have. An hour later, as I packed up our supplies, washing brushes and organizing paint pots, Dean approached cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance. "You look good, Amanda," he said, his voice lacking its former arrogance. The compliment contained no hint of the flirtatious entitlement that had once characterized his interactions with me. "Thanks," I replied, continuing my cleanup. "How are you settling into the new place?" "It's fine. Close to work." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I hear you're taking classes." I nodded, surprised he knew. "Early childhood education. Mrs. Michael's sister is my instructor, actually," I explained, keeping my tone neutral. Dean seemed to struggle with what to say next, his fingers tapping an anxious rhythm against his leg. Finally, he simply offered, "I'm proud of you," before walking away. The words felt strange coming from him, sincere but irrelevant, like praise from a distant acquaintance rather than the man I'd once built my life around. I realized with some surprise that his opinion, once so crucially important to my sense of self-worth, now carried no more weight than a casual comment from a neighbor. By July, Tyler and I had settled into routines that no longer centered around accommodating Dean's unpredictable schedule. We ate dinner at our small kitchen table instead of in front of the TV, started a book club where we took turns reading chapters to each other, and spent Saturday mornings volunteering at the community garden, where Tyler had become the unofficial expert on tomato plants. The divorce became final on July 3rd, marked not with celebration but with a quiet acknowledgement. I treated myself to a haircut, something shorter and more modern than I'd ever dared try during my marriage, and took Tyler for ice cream after his summer day camp. One evening later that week, as I helped Tyler practice penalty kicks at the park, golden hour sunlight casting long shadows across the grass, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Are you happier now, Mom?" I paused, the soccer ball momentarily forgotten at my feet. In the rush of rebuilding our lives, I hadn't really considered my own happiness separately from his. The question required honest reflection, rather than an automatic reassurance. The answer came easily. "Yes, I am." Tyler nodded thoughtfully, retrieving the ball. "Me too," he said, lining up another shot with careful precision. "I like knowing what's going to happen next." His simple observation captured exactly what had changed in our lives. The unpredictability of Dean's presence had been replaced by something more valuable: consistency and peace. The constant anxiety of waiting for another disappointment had lifted, leaving room for genuine joy to take root. As we walked home hand in hand through the summer twilight, fireflies beginning to illuminate the path ahead of us, I realized my revenge hadn't been about the public humiliation, or even the divorce papers with their ironic cupcake. Those had been satisfying, but ultimately superficial victories. The true revenge was this: building a life where Dean's absence was no longer a disappointment but a relief. A life where Tyler didn't anxiously watch the door, where I didn't construct elaborate excuses for broken promises, where both of us could thrive within the boundaries of realistic expectations rather than perpetual hope.